Attorney General Jeff Sessions has announced that the Justice Department will be looking into social media bias complaints, saying there's concern over free exchange of ideas, and he's attempting to enlist the aid of attorneys general of several U.S. states.
Could this lead to new regulation and even possible lawsuits? Joining us to weigh in are John Carlin from Morrison and Forrester and Ian Myers from Newspicks. Thank you both for joining us. Ian, I'll start with you, if I may, because you were involved over the last couple of weeks in helping to brief staffers of members of Congress that were involved with the hearings yesterday. What was the sort of questions, the topics that they were kind of asking you most about that you can give us insight on?
The questions and the topics that they were asking were pretty basic, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of them were concerned around competition. They were looking for alternatives to Facebook, to Twitter, to the big companies, and asking, why don't people leave? Why don't people switch? And then they were also around very specific incidents. They wanted to know, they wanted to have us as Newspicks, as a sort of alternative, weigh in on some of the problems that have been caused around very specific online incidents, Alex Jones, et cetera.
So, John, as someone who has served in the Justice Department, what do you think that Attorney General Jeff Sessions is after here? You think he's looking at antitrust concerns or more on the censorship side? Where's the trail for you?
Well, I guess maybe I'll express this more as a hope than an analysis, but at a time when we know that nation states are targeting our social media providers to try to influence us as Americans, to cause problems inside our country, I hope the Justice Department will continue to focus on making sure that our elections are free and fair and that any foreign involvement is called out. And I think the Senate Intelligence Committee hearing yesterday was a model of a thoughtful hearing talking about problems that are hard to solve. I know when we tackled child pornography on social media, and then later terrorism, and now nation states, it presents hard choices because on the one hand, we need to stop crooks, spies, and terrorists of taking advantage of this new technology. And on the other hand, we need to do so while preserving what we all hold dear as Americans, our First Amendment rights.
John, does that First Amendment mean that it's highly unlikely there'll be sweeping new laws from Congress forcing these platforms to alter the way they do business?
Yeah, I think when it comes to new laws or new regulations from Congress, if there are any, they're on the safest ground when you're talking about conduct that's clearly illegal, like terrorist fundraising or terrorist propaganda from designated terrorist groups, or nation states that under false pretenses are trying to influence our elections. When you move from there into trying to have the government, let alone the Justice Department, regulate speech online when it comes to people's political views, that's when you're getting to the core of what the First Amendment is designed to protect.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, it's kind of a wonder that they're trying to enlist attorneys general if, in fact, this is about going to private companies and pretending that there's some kind of a free speech obligation that they have, right? This is kind of a non sequitur when it comes to all that. So what's the likely outcome here, do you think? I mean, is it just going to be a matter of, one other way to criticize these platforms, have these platforms, try to be out front with how they're policing themselves?
Right. I think what matters here is not necessarily what Sessions and the Trump administration is doing. I think it's the American public's opinion. They're the ones who can move the needle on what these companies are doing on their own platforms. So if the result of calling for, companies to be regulated or saying that they are not in keeping with free speech online, that could have a material impact for how conservative users of these platforms think. But I don't honestly see any regulation coming anytime soon. It's really even hard to imagine.
Ian, do you think they'll have to move to say that users' data is owned by the user themselves in terms of what you say what public opinion might swing towards? Is it close to getting to that point, or are we still a long way off?
I think we're a long way off. That would restrict a lot of how they make money. I mean, Facebook having to ask every single user before they sold any of their data to anybody else would be a very difficult proposition for them to keep their profit margins or really, their revenue streams.
I mean, are they hurting competition, and do they have too much say in what sort of news and content people get?
I'll say, look, if you were to look at it from purely an antitrust perspective, and I'm not an antitrust expert, the one thing I can tell you as a former career prosecutor at the Justice Department, it is not helpful if you're going to look at antitrust to have the executive, the commander-in-chief, call out and criticize these companies from the point of view of one political party before you started an antitrust investigation. And I think you saw that and somewhat influenced the way the AT&T merger was reviewed. Traditionally, our antitrust reviews are based very much on the law and the facts and not the political views of one party or the other, and it should stay that way.
You agree, antitrust? You don't see antitrust on the table?
I don't see it coming, no.
I mean, I guess the only way you would think about it is, you know, Google has 90+% share in search. Do they utilize that in a way to lock people in, you know, to sort of the source of their news and skew it?
And can you argue that they stifle competition so that nobody else can?
It has been argued in Europe that that's what they're doing, and the Europeans tend to be ahead of us. I mean, we could say that in the U.S., but I don't think it's likely.